2,000 years ago, the land of Judea was a place of small villages, dusty roads, a simple homes built from stone and clay. It was a world very different from the one we know today. Farmers walked long distances to their fields, fishermen worked on the waters of the Sea of Galilee, merchants traveled from town to town carrying goods along narrow roads. This was the world in which Jesus lived. But what did the people of the Chimi actually look like? The answer may surprise many people today, because the images we often imagine are very different from what history and archaeology reveal. And by the end of this journey, we will discover something about their lives that most people never imagine. The land itself shaped the people who lived there. Judea was a rugged landscape filled with hills, valleys, and dry terrain. Small villages were scattered across the countryside, often surrounded by olive trees, vineyards, and fields of grain. Most homes were built from rough stones held together with mud and clay. Roofs were flat and often used for daily activities such as drying food or resting during the evening. Life in these villages was simple, but not easy. Water had to be carried from wells. Food depended on successful harvests and fishing. Every day required effort and resilience. Archaeological studies of skeletons from the region reveal an interesting detail about the people of the Chimi. Most men were shorter than men people today. The average height may have been around 1 meter 65 centimeters. Women were often even shorter, but their bodies were strong. Daily life demanded constant physical labor, walking long distances, carrying heavy loads, farming fields, and working with tools shaped their muscles and posture. Strength was not built in training house. Each was built through survival. Ancient fishermen Sea of Galilee boat. 17. Biblical carpenter woodworking. 18. Woman grinding grain stone mill ancient. The people of Judea were part of the Middle Eastern populations of the ancient world. Their skin tones were usually olive or brown, shaped by generations living under the strong sun of the region. Hair was typically dark black or deep brown and their eyes were also usually dark. Their appearance reflected centuries of cultures that had lived in the region, including ancient Israelites and neighboring peoples. Clothing in the Chimi of Jesus was simple and practical. Most people owned only a few garments. A typical outfit included a long tunic made from wool or linen. Over the tunic, people often wore a cloak that could protect them from cold nights or strong winds. Leather sandals protected their feet while walking across rocky paths and dusty roads. Clothing also revealed social status. The wealthy wore finer fabrics, while the poor often wore rough cloth that had been repaired. Men Chimis. The faces of that world were far more diverse and realistic than many artistic images suggest. Work filled most hours of the day. Farmers cultivated fields of wheat and barley using simple tools. Fishermen cast nets into the waters of the Sea of Galilee, sometimes working through the night. Carpenters, builders, and craftsmen shaped wood and stone for homes and tools. Women spent hours grinding grain with heavy stones, preparing bread, and caring for children. Every member of the household played a role in survival. Life was demanding, and rest was rare. Daily life revolved around family and community. Villages were close-knit places where neighbors knew each other well. Markets were busy and noisy. People traded food, pottery, cloth, and tools. Children often began helping their families at a young age, learning the skills needed for survival. The rhythm of life followed the rising and setting of the sun. Without electricity or modern technology, daylight determined the pace of work and rest. The region was influenced by many cultures. The Roman Empire ruled the land. Roman soldiers could often be seen in cities and along major roads. Greek culture had also spread throughout the region after the conquests of Alexander the Great. Despite these influences, local traditions remained strong. Religion played a central role in daily life, shaping beliefs, customs, and community gatherings. When we imagine the world of Jesus, it can sometimes feel distant and almost unreal. But the people who lived in the Chimi were not characters from paintings or statues. They were real people. They woke early, worked hard, cared for their families, and hoped for a better future. Their lives were shaped by the land, their work, and their faith. It was among these ordinary people that the message of Jesus began to spread. Most people in the Chimi of Jesus lived in small villages scattered across the hills of Judea and Galilee. These villages were often simple communities with only a few hundred residents. Homes were built from rough stones, sometimes covered with mud or clay to seal the walls. The roofs were usually flat and made from wooden beams covered with branches and packed earth. These rooftops were not just part of the structure of the home, they were also used as places to rest, dry food, or even gather with family during the evening when the air became cooler. Life in these homes was modest, but they formed the center of family life. Food in the time of Jesus was simple and based mostly on what people could grow or trade locally. Bread was one of the most important foods. Families often baked bread daily using ground grain in simple clay ovens. Olives in olive oil were also common, along with figs, grapes, and dates. Fish from the Sea of Galilee was another important source of food, especially for communities living near the water. Meals were usually simple, but they were shared together as families and communities. Markets were lively places in the ancient world. In towns and cities, people gathered to trade goods, sell food, and exchange news. Merchants displayed pottery, fabrics, spices, and tools. Farmers brought grain, vegetables, and fruit from nearby fields. These markets were not only places of commerce, they were also places where people talked, shared stories, and learned what was happening in other villages. Travel in the ancient world was slow and often difficult. Most people walked long distances along dusty roads that connected villages and cities. Animals such as donkeys were sometimes used to carry goods or help with travel. Journeys could take days. Roads were not always safe, and travelers often relied on hospitality from villages along the way. Despite the challenges, these roads connected communities across the region. Family life was very important in the time of Jesus. Children grew up learning the daily skills needed to survive. Young boys often learned the work of their fathers, such as farming, fishing, or carpentry. Girls usually helped their mothers with household tasks like preparing food, baking bread, and caring for the younger children. From an early age, everyone in the household had responsibilities. Life required cooperation from the entire family. Religion was at the center of daily life. For many people in Judea, faith shaped their traditions, their celebrations, and their understanding of the world. The temple in Jerusalem was an important spiritual center, and many people traveled there during major religious festivals. Local synagogues also played an important role in community life, where people gathered to pray, read sacred texts, and learn. Faith gave meaning and hope to a world that was often difficult. Life in the time of Jesus was closely tied to the rhythm of nature. Most people woke up very early, often at sunrise, because daylight was the most valuable part of the day. Without electricity or modern tools, nearly all work had to be done while the sun was up. Farmers spent long hours in the fields planting, harvesting, or caring for animals. Fishermen prepared their boats and nets, sometimes working through the early morning hours after fishing during the night. For many families, the day was filled with constant tasks that could not be delayed. Water had to be carried from wells. Food had to be prepared by hand. Grain had to be ground with heavy stones before bread could be baked. Even simple tasks required chimney, patience, and physical strength. Roads connected the towns and villages of Judea and Galilee. Some of these roads had existed for centuries, used by traders, travelers, and soldiers. Many journeys were made on foot. People walked from village to village carrying goods, messages, or supplies. Travel was not always easy. The roads could be dusty in the summer and muddy during the rainy seasons. Yet these paths connected communities and allowed ideas, news, and stories to travel across the region. Through these same roads, the teachings of Jesus would eventually spread from one town to another. When we imagine the world of Jesus today, it can sometimes feel distant and almost legendary. But the truth is much simpler. The people who lived in the time were ordinary men and women living ordinary lives. They worked hard, cared for their families, and faced the same human struggles that people still experience today. Their world was not filled with comfort or luxury. Each was a world shaped by effort, community, and faith. Each was within this very human world that one of the most powerful messages in history began to spread. But the biggest surprise about the people who lived in the time of Jesus was not simply how they looked. The biggest surprise was how demanding their daily lives truly were. From sunrise till sunset, nearly every moment of the day was filled with work just to survive. Food had to be grown, caught, or prepared. Water had to be carried. Homes had to be maintained. Understanding this reality brings the ancient world closer to us. Because the message that would one day change history began not among kings or emperors, but among ordinary people living ordinary lives. If you enjoy discovering the real history behind the world of the Bible, Subscribe to the Faith of Ages and join us on Mori Journeys into the ancient past.